Hello, Steve White, Steve Arts 89. Well, I'm here to talk about Creepshow again, season 2. I totally loved the first season. They actually recreated the feel and look of the original Creepshow films, which I love, and they just loved doing what they were doing, and they didn't try to reinvent it. They didn't try to deconstruct it. They didn't try to do. They just were just like, we love this movie. We just want to make it into a TV series, and they did it, and it was beautiful, and I loved it. Now, this series got off to a bumpy start this season. The first season was 2019, and you know what happened the next year. So they sort of just did two specials, sort of for the second season, really. Um, and the first one was animated, and it was awful. Because what they do with this show is, because you're supposed to be reading a comic, they'll show the comic book, comic strips and that, and they sort of animate a little bit, which kind of works for the intros, for the stories and that, but it doesn't work as a style of animation for a whole episode. It was woeful. It looked like some kid did it on his iPad, you know, like during recess or something. It was awful. The story wasn't that great. It was basically a surgeon trapped alone on an island. I'm not going to spoil all these just in case you're actually watching this and haven't watched the show, which some people do actually do. And I know I don't have a lot of viewers, but I don't want to ruin it for even one person. So that one was called Survivor Type. Didn't like it. The second one was called Twitter from the Circus of the Dead, which is where a girl basically is tweeting on a live show that she thinks is a show, but it's actually real. So neither story is great, and the animation looks awful. But then the second special they did, which is more of a Christmas special, although they both aired, I think, on Halloween in October of that year, called Shapeshifters Anonymous, was brilliant. It was so over the top. Basically, this guy shows up for a support group for people who turn into other creatures like were-turtles and werewolves, and it sounds ridiculous, but they just made it work, and I loved it. And without giving anything away, they rewrite the Bible and Santa Claus, and there's an epic battle at the end. It is just amazing, and I loved it. Now they actually get into the actual series, which was in 2021, really. So there was a big delay, two specials to sort of fill out where the season should have started. Now the first episode was called Model Kid, which is basically a kid who loves horror being bullied by his uncle, and I guess you can work out how that would have turned out. But it was great to see all these sort of Universal monster style creatures and that, and he was building Aurora style model kits and stuff. It was just great for the fanboy and us all. We love it. The second episode was called second story of the episode was called Public Television of the Dead. So it was basically Evil Dead. It was like an episode of Evil Dead with no copyright issues. And I'm like, how did they do that? They've got a Necronomicon, and the guy reads it out on TV, and then everyone turns into Evil Dead zombies, and it was just amazing. And I'm like, how did they must have just had like a gentleman's agreement to do this? Because I don't know how they could have arranged the proper copyright. You know, those negotiations were a nightmare, but it was really great. It was set in the 70s, so it was really good. Now, Old Lady Spinster was the next one, and Pesticide, that was the double for the next episode. Old Lady Spinster basically has a couple of kids, the grandchildren of a supposed serial killer, running a bed and breakfast themed on her crimes. And a YouTuber, current day YouTuber, comes and causes trouble. And you can imagine how that goes. Pesticide is about a guy who, he's not exactly professional in his job with getting rid of insects, and he meets a very, very sticky, squishy demise. The Right Stuff has Ryan Kwan, I think his name is, who was in Home and Away in Australia, and he was in a few other things. He's a bit older now. It's interesting to not see him just as a kid and a young boy. He plays an astronaut who is jealous of his fellow astronaut who gets the job of making first contact with an alien species. And he kills him. And that's not the biggest twist. So that was an interesting one. Sibling Rivalry was the next one. And that had a girl trying to convince her counsellor, who's played by Molly Ringwald, that her brother's trying to kill her. And he is. But there's a good reason. Pipe Screams, which is about a Karen landlord who's quite racist and is refusing to fix the pipes, where there's a creature that apparently is made out of all the hair and things that go down the pipes, and eventually the whole building gets together and throws her down the pipe. and basically feeds her to the monster that she wouldn't fix, or wouldn't get rid of. So that was a nice end for her. Within the Walls of Madness is this one stars Denise Crosby, and she kind of saves it because it's basically a military operation with a creature from another dimension, and it kills a bunch of people, and then she blames, because she's a scientist trying to connect with this thing, she blames this military guy for killing his other the members of his team to protect the monster. So she's an evil scientist. So she pulls that off really well because we love Denise. And the last story is Night of the Living Late Show, which stars Justin Long. And I can't believe I'm over time. I was trying to keep this to 5 minutes. Basically, he creates, with his wife's money, and his wife's very insecure that he's just there for her money, he creates a device which is like a tanning bed where you basically get in and you can be put into any movie that you watch on streaming, basically. So he, for some reason, picks Horror Express, which is, I've got it, I've tried to watch it a couple of times, I find it really boring. It's got Christopher, that, damn it, he's been in everything. All the Hammer films, him and Peter Cushing are in it. And as brilliant as it was, the good job they did of putting him into all these scenes, I'm not a fan of the film, and I'm not that familiar with it, so I couldn't tell where they'd added him in, where they recreated things, and it wasn't as effective as if they'd picked a film like Night of the Living Dead, which they do use later in the film. That part is great. They recreate the house, they recreate the zombies. I don't know why they didn't just go with a really recognisable horror film. That kind of ruined it. Maybe a budgetary concern, copyright issues. Maybe maybe that film, isn't under copyright anymore or something like that. So they were use it. I don't know what the explanation for that was, but it was a good episode. But they picked the wrong film. But then they saved it because they had a good film for the end. But the whole episode could have been an absolute Forrest Gump-like joy, going through horror films, and instead we just sort of got Horror Express. But so what should have been a really great ending for the series was a little underwhelming, but still pulled it out at the very, very end. That just made you sort of want more. But overall, I love the second season. Had a very rocky start, sort of not fully realised end, but overall the season was great, and the show is great, and the tone, the atmosphere, the joy of it all, the love for the movies and for this, this type of storytelling and the anthology and horror and all that is there, and it's really palpable and enjoyable, and I couldn't wait for the third season.